Greetings, my excellent friend. Welcome to the Heavy Metal History Report.
Get into.
All right. So, ladies and gentlemen, listeners of the podcast, my guest for this episode is Mike McKenzie. You know him mainly probably from the Red Chord, but he has his hands in so many other things. He's currently in Wear Your Wounds. He's working on a new Beyond the Sixth Seal album. Stomach Earth, Nightkin, Unraveler. The list goes on and on and on, right?
Yeah, there's a lot of them. I had notes. I was gonna write. I was gonna have notes so I remember what to talk about, but I didn't. I forgot to do that.
I think we'll be able to cover a lot of stuff here, which is good because you have your hands in so many things.
Yeah, I try to keep. I have a hard time keeping track of what I'm working on at the moment, so that's why I've got a million spreadsheets with projects.
Damn.
I'm trying to get organized. I have all these spreadsheets with like recording processes and where we're getting or how far we are into writing or whatever it is.
Yeah, especially with like the different styles with everything that you do. I'm sure like keeping track of like, this kind of riff or this kind of band or, whatever parts you're working on, it's got to be like a puzzle to keep track of it all.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's more like the tough things to keep track of are where I am in a project or what needs to be done. So I have to keep lists of everything, or else I really I get distracted or I get off task.
Mm-hmm.
So and then don't finish things. So I have to. This is like the year I'm going to finish a bunch of stuff that's been sitting around. So we're like the Six Seals is one of those things. We've had songs for like, I don't know, it's 2019. So we've had songs for around a decade that we're just now finally recording. So
that's fucking crazy. Because I was thinking the other day, it's been almost a decade since I've seen you. Next year would be the 10 years since Summer Slaughter.
Wow, that's crazy.
I know, right?
2010 doesn't seem like 10 years ago.
It really doesn't. I was just like kind of confounded by that fact. I was like, Jesus, that's been 10 years already.
Yeah, it's insane how much time has passed. I saw that Konami is doing their like 40th anniversary release or something.
Ooh.
And I know, I knew they had been around a while, but I'm like, 40 years, really? I guess 40 years ago was 1979.
Oh yeah.
So,
damn.
But, technically,
that's
end of the year.
Crazy.
Yeah, it's 2010 was 10 years ago almost, or
Man, all that time gone by. But you've been working on a lot of stuff. You've been busy. You've put out a couple records since then. I know the one thing I do want to talk to you about, obviously, is because your last Red Chord record is celebrating a 10-year anniversary this year, which is pretty cool.
Yeah, that's a long time. That's crazy.
Yeah. But before that, one thing I like to kind of talk about with guests or people I have made acquaintances with, it's a little bit of a cliche question or thing to talk about, but I like knowing about it because it makes sense when you think about the music that you write. But what were some of your first influences as far as heavy metal? Those first records you remember buying, those first bands you remember hearing, that just like sucked you into it.
I think like there's definitely a few that for various stages of my development as a listener. I think the first heavy record that I probably took notice of, the first one that I really remember clearly is it's a toss-up between, it's probably And Justice for All, because my neighbor had a copy of that on cassette and he lost it, so his mom bought him a second copy. My parents didn't let me listen to stuff like that when I was a kid. But my neighbor was the kid that had all that stuff. So he I borrowed it from him once, and I listened to it, and I was like blown away by it. And then he found his old copy after she'd bought him a second copy, so he said he was going to give it to me.
Nice.
Which I was like 9 years old. I was like, you know, the idea of him giving me that was, you know, it was like giving me a, you know, precious gem or something. I was blown away by that, but he just kept forgetting to give it to me, so I never got it.
Oh shit.
But then later he traded another tape that was a big one for me, was Testament's The Legacy. He had that on cassette, and I had this little finger skateboard, and he traded the cassette for the little finger skateboard, which is insanity to me, because like a metal record at that point in time was, you know, so hard to come by, but the stupid little finger skateboard, I didn't care about that. So I gave him the finger skateboard, and he gave me Testament: The Legacy, which is probably still my favorite thrash record of all time.
Yeah, and that was what, 87?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think I was probably 9 years old, so it would have been 89 or 90 that I got it.
Okay.
But, yeah, I wore it out. I literally wore the tape. I listened to the tape until the tape itself broke. And it already was a little crumpled in one part over the beginning of The Haunting. So years later, when I still listen to the song The Haunting now, I still hear this like phantom, like shitty sound that isn't really there, but I just imagine it because the cassette was all crumpled up at that point. That first opening riff. But that record was one. Creator, Endless Pain, I bought that for $1 at a comic book store in my town.
Wow.
And that I was really excited about, because it was like, you know, the cover was this dude stabbing a guy on the ground, and the songs were like frantic and crazy, and they don't play very well on that record. There's like guitar playing is really sloppy. They're obviously young.
Mm-hmm.
And but it's great, and it's like just this raw, crazy thing. So those records, probably Megadeth, Rust in Peace. Again, the same neighbor made a tape for that for me. And then, and also Skid Row's self-titled record. That was the first tape I ever owned.
Okay.
And my mom took me to this place called Leechmere, which was like a electronics store before Best Buy wiped everybody out.
Mm-hmm.
And I got Skid Row, and I remember it was like the first tape I was allowed to have, because my parents were like real cautious about lyrics and stuff. And I still think that record's awesome. It's like a great hard rock record.
Yeah, I think Sebastian Bach is kind of like one of those underrated, you know, guys in bands that I don't know. It's so weird. I feel like he's outlived everything that he's done in bands, and he's just like Sebastian Bach now, you know, if that makes sense, what I'm saying there. But because he's like, now he just shows up in like episodes of Trailer Park Boys and stuff like that. I'm like, do you even do music anymore? Like, what is it you do?
Doesn't he have a solo career as himself now?
Yeah, maybe, and I just haven't kept up with it. That would make sense.
I think he's sung on like a bunch of different things, and probably, I know they did some Skid Row stuff for a while. I don't know when Skid Row stopped making records.
Yeah.
Or if maybe they make them now. I don't know. I think the last one I listened to was called like Subhuman Race, maybe. It was like in the 90s. Okay. I don't remember. But I like the first two records a lot. I mean, Slave to the Grind is good too, but the first one is just so like, you know, it's like a lot of bands. The first record it's like their first shot making a record, and they're young and they don't know what they're doing really, so they make this crazy record, and it's awesome. You know, it's just one of those. Nothing, you know. Slave to the Grind's great too, but I don't know. There's like all that. It's like everything. I feel like a band's first record is oftentimes like, especially when they're young and it's the band member's first record too. It's like they're just like, oh, here's all the ideas that we've ever had, and we want to just do everything, and then they make this like explosive record. And I feel like that's why a lot of bands' first record is always so impactful on people, because it's like the raw energy that's been pent up in them for like their whole lives comes out on that one record, and then they start to like come into their own, and maybe they make better records, but that energy of the first record I feel like it's because of that.
Yeah, I agree 100%. I know for me personally, like a lot of bands' first records really resonate with me more than like other stuff. And it's not that like other stuff they've done is bad. It's just like it's like you were saying, you can tell that's where a lot of like, I don't know who said this quote, but it's like you spend your whole life writing your first record, and then that's where it all goes to. I was like, yep, that makes a lot of sense.
It totally does, because you're using stuff that you wrote when you were 15. Like the first Red Chord record, there's like really old songs on there that, you know, some of those guys had been writing before we knew each other, you know, like, and then the next record, it's like a couple of years apart. It's like he took a couple of years of writing versus 15 years of writing or whatever. And, you know, I mean, I feel like sometimes bands have a different, you know, they have a different results. Like Metallica put out Kill 'Em All, and that sounds like it's like they're wearing their influence on their sleeve, and it wasn't really till the second record that they like became themselves, you know.
Yeah, and I mean too, especially with Metallica, you know, they were still experimenting with a genre that hadn't really been super cemented yet either.
Yeah,
so there's a lot of room
together. Yeah, but they're like, you know, that first record, I just think of them as like young kids who were like, we love these bands and we just want to make music like them and be fast, you know. And they have that, and there's that fire is there, but the fire is, you know, the fire was still there in the second one.
Oh yeah.
And it sounded like them, you know, like, but I don't know. Everybody's different. Everybody has a different experience, but
so with like getting those records and hearing those bands, did that have anything to do with like influencing you playing guitar, or how did you get interested in that?
Well, so actually I think that, well, I definitely, there was a kind of a silly reason why I started playing guitar, a couple of them. That same neighbor and I had had like a quote unquote band. It wasn't a band. It was he and I making noise in the basement. He had like a snare drum from school, and there was like this guitar that was it was called a Hot Licks guitar, and it was one of those guitars that just had a bunch of buttons on it and made noise.
Yeah.
But it had a whammy bar. It had like on the fretboard, it had buttons that played little phrases, but on the, like where the pickups would be, there were actual buttons that just played notes. And there was a whammy bar that let you modify those notes a little bit. So I would just fool around with that and make weird sounds from it. And one day we were deciding who was going to play what in the band, and he said, well, you're really good at the guitar, so you should play guitar, and I'm better at drums. But neither of us were good at either. and I wasn't playing guitar anyway. I was playing the Hot Licks toy guitar. So then I told my parents I wanted to play guitar. I also told them I wanted to play drums, and I always felt like I've always been kind of fixated on drums, and my parents wouldn't let me have a drum kit, so I got a guitar. So I play guitar partially because of those two stupid reasons, but also because I wanted, you know, both the legacy and justice definitely. I mean, I often say that the reason I play guitar is because of Injustice for All.
Yeah.
But there's a number of reasons. You know, I wanted to play guitar like James Hetfield. You know, that was definitely a major, you know, crucial start for me.
Yeah, and it's really interesting to me too with how every guitar player, for the most part, eventually like they get to that point, and you are one of those guitar players that like you have such a distinct style that like when I hear something you've written, it's like, yeah, that's a Mike riff or a Mike sounding kind of style.
Thanks.
So it's kind of like the distillation of those little influences that have built up in you over the years, I would assume, along with your skill and like learning as you've went on, that have like formed that style of yours.
Yeah, I mean, you know, it's funny, like we're talking about this, and I think I'm 38 now, so I've been playing guitar for like, 27 years.
Mm-hmm.
But I still do some of the same things that I've always done from that. Like I still like think in a similar way of like the guitar playing on Justice. I still think about those same types of harmonies. That like idea never left me from when I first heard that record. It's almost 30 years later. I'm still like kind of in that place a little bit, which is weird. I always do stuff like we're working on the Six Seal record right now, and there's all these layers of guitar, and there's tons of stuff in there where I definitely got that from Justice. That's so. Even the Nightkin guys and I talk. We always talk about that record too. We're always just like, Justice for All. That's everything. That record is like all the ideas.
Yeah, that's a good point. Especially for the time that it came out too, man. It was just so different than everything else.
Yeah, those like layered harmonies, just I don't know, that it's the layered harmonies that really affected me the most. Of all the, I love the like the brutal songs and the like and the moodiness and all that stuff, but the layered harmonies really is the major takeaway for me for that record. And it's like a huge pillar of my own writing.
Yeah.
From that. So
the one thing I always really wonder about that record is, it gets a lot of shit for like the mix of it and everything like that between like Lars's snare and the lack of bass and everything. But, the producer or whoever, obviously had something in mind with that record. And, I wonder how much of it was more geared towards the guitars because of those harmonies. That's what he heard. That was the most standout thing. And that's why it was so upfront in the mix.
Yeah. Well, I read or I watched an interview with is it Fleming Rasmussen who did that record? I can't remember.
Yeah, I can't remember either.
I know he did Puppets, but I don't know if he went. I watched an interview with whoever that was, and he talked about how they're talking about the bass and how that there's that whole thing about the bass being mixed out, and it was Fleming. I just looked it up. It's Fleming Rasmussen.
Okay.
They didn't. I guess they didn't. He says in the interview that they wanted the bass mixed like almost completely inaudible. That there was actually, because people always talk about like, is there bass on it? Is there not bass on it? Is he just mirroring every riff? And in the interview he says that he's a great bass player, but they had it mixed lower. I don't know. I've always been like fascinated by that.
Yeah.
Because I don't know, the whole record, I'm fascinated by the whole thing. But I don't know. I mean, the weird production too, a lot of people shit on the production, but I don't know. I would, to me, it's perfect. It is what it is. It's like, if it was better or worse or, that's what the record is. That's what I heard when I was a kid. I didn't know shit about production back then. I was, like 10 years old or whatever. I didn't know what a record was even supposed to sound like, or I didn't even know what certain instruments were. When I was younger, I used to hear like fast double bass, and I thought they were hitting the floor tom.
Yeah.
And actually I think it's because of that record, because the toms on that record are so like cutting that I think that made me think, oh yeah, wow, this guy's going nuts on the tom. And then as the toms, I would think that somebody was hitting the floor tom while also hitting a ride cymbal. I was like 11 or something, and I was like, how is he doing that? He's hitting everything at once, So
yeah, it's just always been like a weird thing, and I agree with you in that same sentiment that like I did not know any better when I was younger too about like production. It just sounded heavy to me, and I didn't notice things like bass or snare or anything like that.
Yeah, I just like that chunky Mark IV tone or whatever they used, that like super aggressive attack, of his picking hand. And I don't know, that's what I wanted to hear. When I was young, I just wanted, when I was getting into heavy music, I just wanted to hear like chugging guitars. I didn't care about anything other than like super scooped sounding, chugging guitars with like lots of low end and really a lot of saturation.
Yeah.
Which is why I got into death metal, because there was a lot of that.
Yeah, and it, like, especially, so Injustice for All was like 88, so that was like around the time death metal was kind of blowing up too.
Yeah.
So it would make sense.
Yeah, all that stuff. You know, I just obviously, like most people's stories, the same who are into heavy music. You're getting into it when you're young, and you just want to hear heavier and heavier stuff.
Yep.
Until you're just like, I'll take, the most ridiculous thing possible. Just give you the most over the top thing you can, until eventually you get tired of that, or you get older or something. I don't know. I guess I've never really gotten tired of that though, because I still will seek out the most disgusting sounding record.
Yeah, I'm the same way. Like, I'm not too much younger than you, definitely in my 30s,
Mm-hmm.
but yeah, whenever I find that one record that just sounds ridiculously heavy, or has a great guitar tone and it's just the nastiest sounding thing, I'm like, I did it. I found it.
Yeah.
It satiates me for a little while until the next thing.
Yeah, then you want something else. Yeah, like lately I've been listening to that band Infernal Coil.
Oh yeah.
And that record just sounds like it's just like a storm of shit. And and it's awesome. It's just like this total nightmare, a swirling mess. And it's great. I've been playing that on repeat. Just, I don't know, I can't get enough of that, like, just relentless, over the top pile of shit. It's great.
Isn't that, I feel like that's something too that's maybe lost on a lot of like the newer generation of people, is listening to a record over and over and over and over again. Because I do that too, where like if I like something, I listen to it basically nonstop. Whereas I think a lot of people just kind of like go on to the next thing. They just like, oh, this was cool, next. Like,
well, that probably has to do with, when you're a kid, years ago,
mm-hmm.
you buy a tape or a CD or something, you're like
stuck.
You spend all your money on it. Even if it sucks, you're gonna listen to it. Like I bought stuff that I didn't like, but I listened to it again and again because I knew it was gonna be a while till I got something else new.
Yeah.
And it already worn out all my other tapes, so I forget. Like I bought Whitesnake's Slip of the Tongue, which I think is a pretty good record, but at the time I thought it was going to be heavier than it was, and it had Steve Vai on it, so I was real excited. It didn't have as much shredding as I wanted, and there were like ballads and stuff. And now I listen to that record, I'm like, it's pretty good. It's real cheesy, like, and fun. And some of the songs aren't that great, but it's not the best Whitesnake record. But as a kid, I wanted it to be this, like, I wanted more and more heavy stuff, so I didn't really like it, but I listened to it all the time because it was like the second tape I owned. So, like every other than taping stuff off the radio or borrowing stuff from friends or having friends make tapes for me, it was like, this is all I have. So I think I had, at the time, I had like that record and Skid Row, and I just had to listen to my friends' other stuff, so so I listen to it. I feel like now if a kid buys a record he doesn't like, people don't buy records anymore.
Yeah.
So, oh yeah, this isn't very good. Next thing,
Yeah, that is the one downside, man. Nobody buys shit anymore.
I guess for me, I think the bummer about that is then, because there are a lot of records that I've listened to that I didn't like when I first listened to them, and they grew on me, and then I really like grew to love them. And if I hadn't given them a chance, I never would get there with them. Not everything, you're not going to like everything the first time you listen to it.
Nope. I used to be really bad about that too, like really bad about it. And I guess something happened, over me growing up. It's now I really have to listen to something 2 or 3 times to like let it sink in, and then decide, like, do I like it? Is it bad? Is there something good on here? I dissect it a little bit more, I guess, which is, I guess, good for me. I don't know. I feel like life's too short, man. And like, if you're kind of limiting yourself on all the music that's out there, you're missing a lot of really good stuff. And that's kind of where I sit with music nowadays.
Yeah, there's so much, you're never going to get to it all. So like,
oh, man,
you may as well give everything a shot. A good example for me is that band the Ruins of Beverast, which I fucking love that band. And the first record I listened to was I think it was Blood Vaults, the one before the one they just put out.
Mm-hmm.
And I liked it. I thought it was cool, but I put it on. I liked it, but I wasn't really that affected by it till I listened to it a few more times and started paying more attention. And now I love it so much. I ended up like, I've listened to it so many times, and it made me really love the band more, because the more I listened to that record, the more I kind of understood what that dude was going for, because he did that record. It's just him on the record.
Yeah.
Just one guy. And now they're easily one of my favorite bands. And if I had just moved on and not given it more time, maybe I wouldn't be appreciating it this much. Now I listen to those. I'm like so inspired by that project, because it's so, I don't know. It's just so, everything is just so perfectly done. The last record they did is just a fucking masterpiece. That Exuvia record. I don't know if you listen to that.
Yeah. I definitely, I listened to it when it came out, but I never like revisited it after like a couple listens. But
you should give it more time, because it's
yes.
It's so fucking dark. And the one thing I love about it is that it's super creepy and dark, but there's tons and tons of major scale stuff going on. There's all this, like, if you actually dissect the songs and were to just pull the chord progressions out,
mm-hmm.
it's like, it's kind of surprising how dark it comes out. I don't know. There's this something real special going on with that record, and that guy knows what he's doing. I forget his name, but now he's got a full band. I saw a little bit of it at Roadburn last year.
Oh, nice.
And they played Exuvia, the whole record, and I didn't stay for the whole set because I was trying to see someone else too, but it was incredible. And it felt really cool to see that too, since he's like a one-man project that brings a band together, and I was playing with Stomach Earth that show too, and so I felt like a kinship with a stranger, as music makes you feel. I was like, yeah, that guy's made his record, and now he's got a band playing his stuff, and it's fucking brilliant. I don't get tired of those.
I was kind of wondering too, since you mentioned Ruins, when you did Stomach Earth, was like, did you feel the necessity to do everything on your own, or like, were you trying to have other people play it?
Well, so it kind of changed over the years. I first started recording demos for it in like 2001, I think.
Oh wow, holy shit!
Like, I joined the Red Chord in 2000,
mm-hmm.
and then I had all these solo projects that I was always doing, because I was in a band with some guys from my hometown before I joined the Red Chord, but we didn't do a lot. We played some shows and we wrote some songs, but everybody kind of had other things going on. It wasn't like a massive priority.
Yeah.
And we were all trying to write different stuff a little at times. So I ended up writing, I've always just written a lot of stuff by myself. So when I started Stomach Earth, it was actually called Neuralthotep.
Yeah, try saying that 10 times fast.
Yeah, I mean, I pronounce it that way. I don't know how you're supposed to pronounce it, because it's obviously not supposed to be pronounceable.
Yeah.
But that was the name of the band, and then I found out it was just me, and I made a couple demos that I put on mp3.com.
Oh, I remember that site.
Yeah, I was really into mp3.com, because I spent all this time as a kid, like, seeking out music and looking at thanks lists to find bands, and I remember looking at booklets and seeing like, oh, he's wearing this shirt, I better check those guys out, So then when the internet made it easier, I was like, holy shit, you can get anything. It blew the doors off.
Yeah.
The whole operation. So I was putting stuff on there. I had some other projects that I posted on there, some of the weird stuff, and Neuralthotep was one of them. And then I decided, I just did it by myself in my bedroom, and it sounded really sloppy and shitty, and I made up fake band members to be in the band. I don't know why I decided to do that, but for some reason, and actually if you look at Metal Archives, somebody has listed the band members that were listed, and actually did some kind of detective work to try to figure out what real people they might be, because there was another point in time when later on I decided that 3 people were going to play in the band, and they never did, but I still put their names up because I asked them, but we just never got around to it because I just didn't finish anything.
Yeah.
So there's like this listing of like fake names for fake people that didn't play in the band. It was just me. So then the band kind of went dormant for a while, and I made like a 1 demo, and a few years later, and I changed the name to Stomach Earth. Stomach Earth was the name of one of the band members of Neuralthotep when I was making up the fake band.
Oh, okay.
So I think he was the drummer. He was like a made up guy, or maybe he was a guitar player. I don't remember. If you look at the Metal Archive, I think it credits me as being Stomach Earth, when in my mind I think I was a different guy in the lineup. But I don't know. I was just, I've always just been into like, the weird mystique of not knowing what the hell's going on with band members, and like, like the residents and all those. You're like, who are these guys and who's this person? And everybody, we don't know who's in the band. We don't know who made what. I always like that because, it makes it more fun.
Yeah.
You're like, we don't know who knows what's going on in the studio. Like we don't even know if there's anybody there. Maybe it's one guy. So then Stomach Earth just became a thing that I was just doing like demos of. And initially it started off, I just wanted to sound like Panthymonium. I just wanted to make Panthymonium sounding songs. And like, it was like a Panthymonium disembowelment hybrid. And then like years passed and I didn't do anything with it. And then one day a guy was like, hey, I'll put that record out. You should put that. He always would tell me I should put it out, and was always trying to get me to release stuff. He's like, you really should do something with that. And I'd be like, sure, but I'd be lazy about it, or, get home from tour and just do nothing for a month instead of work on the project. So then like 2010 or 11, he was like, I'll put it out on Black Market. Just make the record. So I did. So it was just, it really wasn't about, there was no real plan. It was just like, I want to make a record that sounds like this, and I'm just going to do it. So I didn't have the idea so much about people being in it or not in it. It was just like, oh, I can make the record. And then I got like, once I started getting like, real recording stuff, and I could do like better sounding recordings, I realized that I wasn't using an 8-track anymore. I could make records that sounded, semi-pro. So I was like, I'm going to go for it. I'm going to just try it. And that's what happened. So
yeah, and that record does sound really good. I mean, especially, just for doing everything on your own. If I didn't know you, I would have assumed that it was done in a studio, But I mean, technology is just fucking crazy today with how good everything is, like home recording wise.
It is, yeah. And I definitely I didn't really know what I was doing. I've just been kind of fooling around with recordings for a long time, and I eventually, came up with something that I considered to be passable. The only thing that it was mastered though professionally.
Yeah.
And that was like I think the saving grace of the recording, what made it sound heavy. The guitar tone is direct on that record.
Really?
It's from an 8-track. It's from a portable digital 8-track that I got that I used to bring on tour to like practice to. It had like a drum machine built into it. I didn't use the drum machine on the record, but I did use the guitar tone. It's like this overwhelming low end fuzzy tone, but I don't know. It sort of worked out, I guess.
I think it works. I definitely think for sure it's like a hidden gem in like doom metal kind of sphere of music. That's for sure.
Thanks.
I definitely still have the shirt, and I'm pretty sure I still have the vinyl record. I'm not 100% sure because I moved a while back and I lost a bunch of shit, but I'm pretty sure I still have it.
Yeah. I
got good packaging.
Yeah, I really like all the artwork and the way the layout and everything came out.
Yeah.
It's I really got lucky in that sense with the people that I worked with doing a great job. Both artists involved. Sophie Penrose, who did the original pieces, and Mike Wahlberg, who did the layout, both like really nailed the stark vibe of it.
That's cool though too, that guy was willing to like get it out for you, because do you think you would have still put it out if he wasn't like there to help or like do that for you?
Well, I don't think I would have had the I don't think I would have really had the motivation. I wasn't really overly motivated to do it. I wanted to make the record, but doing the like all the logistics of releasing a record were at the time a little overwhelming to me to like do something else. I don't know. I guess something was holding me back. It was probably those logistics that I was just like, yeah, it's a lot of work to do this and that. At the time, I was a lot less motivated. So yeah, if Guy hadn't put it out, it probably would have taken someone else doing that same thing for me to actually put it out. I don't know, or it would have taken years, to get me off my ass and actually do it. So I was also like doing this thing that I've since learned not to do, but everybody does it, and I still find myself doing it, and that is working a project to death, which I feel like almost everyone's guilty of at some point. Because you're working on this thing with that record. I had been working on it for a while, and I wanted it to be perfect, so I kept working on it. And in the way I look at it, if you work on a project and you don't if you don't let it go at some point, you're just going to keep working on it. You'll never finish it because your tastes change and what you want something to be changes. So you'll just keep reworking it until it'll constantly change, and it'll be, at some point you just need to cut it off and let it go so that you can make the next thing. And we were doing that a little bit. I've done that with every record that I've worked on, but I'm better now about being like, it's done. We're done. This is the end. Like even the Wear Your Wounds record, we were at the end, thinking about stuff and getting overanalyzed and getting in our heads a little bit, and then being like, we gotta just move on. The record is now done, and we can make another one. Nothing, you want to make this perfect record, but nothing's stopping you from making another one. Just make another one. You're done with that. Start something new. So I'm sort of doing it a little bit right now with the current Stomach Earth, and I need to just do it.
Yeah, you kind of just gave me like a weird epiphany there.
Oh, yeah?
I've been working on all these like writing projects, and my problem is I keep going back and like changing stuff like relentlessly, and instead of just like finishing it.
You have to just let it go, because otherwise you'll hold on to it forever, and you're holding on to it because you care about it and you want to make it perfect, but it will never be perfect because you will always find something about it later that you don't like. So you may as well just let it out there and do another thing, because then you can make more stuff. Like if I hung on to that Stomach Earth record, I could still be working on that now years later, but at some point I was like, I decided, June 25th or whatever it is, that's the day I'm done with this portion of the record, and I have to move on. I can't change anything, because usually it's like concrete, hard line things that stop you from doing it. Like, we booked the studio time until Friday, so once Friday comes, we can't do anything more. We're done. But when you're working on something on your own terms, it's much harder, because then you can love it to death. You can just keep working on it until you've ruined it, and it's no longer that awesome idea in the beginning, because it's like if you're working with clay or something and you just work the clay till it crumbles and it doesn't stick together anymore. It's like you just gotta make some decisions. Decisions are the hardest part.
Yeah, and especially when you're like making art, whether it's music or actual art or writing or whatever, like it comes from such a, I guess depending on who's making it, it either comes from like an emotional place or, just this weird headspace where you're being vulnerable making this piece of art, and to try and like, I guess distance yourself from that to get it finished is ridiculously hard.
Yeah, and you also, like, a problem I run into is you're like, oh, there's an infinite possibilities, especially with heavy music and like weird, anything like weird or experimental, not just music, but like any visual thing. You can, the possibilities are endless. They're literally endless. And that sometimes gives me decision paralysis. So, but one thing that's helpful is that the more decisions you make, the less you ultimately are able to make. Because if you take the analogy of like a blank canvas, when it's blank, it's infinite. It could be anything. But the more paint strokes that you put on that canvas, the more refined it gets and the less options you have. So to make it something, yeah, sure, you could still paint over whatever, but the closer it gets to being something, the easier it is to make those decisions, because the decisions you make are canceling out other would-be decisions. So you're getting closer, you're refining more and more. And then you just have to, then the other side of that tunnel is, don't refine so much that you destroy the piece. Just decide at some point to be done.
Yeah.
And then be okay with the fact that maybe you're not going to like it as very much, or maybe there are going to be things you hate about it. There are things about every single record I've ever done that I don't like, and there always will be. There's nothing you can do about that. If you make your perfect piece, then you're ready to, retire. So I don't want to make a perfect record, because if I make what I think is a perfect record, then if I make some perfect thing and I'm like, this is it, this is what I've been trying to make my whole life, then what am I going to do? There's nothing more to do.
Yeah, you make a really excellent point there, that it's kind of the flaws that make the thing better, in a sense.
Yeah, and you're gonna learn from those things. Oh man, I can't believe I did this stupid thing. I think about it all the time with recording or riffs or whatever. Like, oh, I wish that we had put this. There's a part on Fed Through the Teeth Machine that I wish. There's like I forget what song it is. There's a part where there's like, there should have been something in this space that I feel is like, oh, it's an Hour of Rats.
Okay.
There's a part in Hour of Rats where I'm like, that needs something else. And I still feel, and that song, I'm really happy with that song. But that song being, even being a song that is like what I think is one of the best songs I've written for the band, it still has something I would change about it. And like even the production, it's like I loved the production so much at the time. My taste has changed and I want different things now. So I don't like it as much as I used to. That's just how it's always going to be that way. There's nothing you can do. You could make it, could be absolutely perfect in the moment, but the next day it's not going to be perfect anymore. So it doesn't even, so you should never even try to make it perfect. David Bowie there's a Bowie quote I always think about when I don't remember the exact wording, but he said something like, I don't think too much about a song when I'm writing it. I just write it and then I move on and write another one. And he ended up having this massive body of work. Some of his stuff isn't good, but plenty of it is,
Yeah, he was definitely just an ungodly musician when it came to like his output.
Yeah, and I think it has a lot to do with that philosophy of just make stuff and move on, make more stuff. You can just keep making things forever. You just, as long as you can, just keep making things. If you die at 80 and you've only made one thing, because you fixated on it, maybe you made one. People might argue like, well, they made this one record that's perfect and it's wonderful. It's like, sure, but what if that person had like let go of stuff more and not clung to things so much? Maybe they would have made other things that affected us. I don't know. That's just kind of how I look at it. Everybody can have their own perspective, obviously, but I just try to let go of that, and because otherwise I overanalyze and I just waste time that I could be making more. And there's like 100 records I want to make, so there's no time to dilly-dally.
Yeah, pitter-patter, right?
Yeah.
So it's cool that you brought up Fed Through the Teeth Machine, because that is one of the things I want to talk to you about. Let's go back about 10 years now, or I guess I assume you would have started writing probably not soon after Pray for Eyes, so that would have been like 2007, 2008, right?
Yeah, I think we were writing probably in 2008, something like that.
So
yeah.
So I guess with Pray for Eyes, that was like, was it bigger than your oh my god, client's record, or was it like, how was it in terms of like sales for that record?
Oh, it didn't sell as much as clients. It was a different, I feel like there were a lot of reasons for that, but the industry between 2005 and 2009 had changed a lot. I think the mid 2000s, things were like really changing as far as digital sales becoming like streaming and sales and stuff becoming a thing. I remember when we signed our contract with Metal Blade in like 2000, like it must have been 2004 or 3 or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
We had no idea that digital was going to be what it was. We were just like, who cares about that? That's nothing. We didn't realize, the effect it was going to have. It's funny to think about that now. Think about like 2005. People weren't thinking that same way. Industry people were, but
right.
The average listener wasn't thinking, I'm going to stream everything on my telephone, but, so yeah, Teeth Machine definitely. I don't remember what Teeth Machine sold, but I know is at least the last numbers that I saw were less, and it makes sense. It had another 4 years on it, and Metal Blade. It was our first release with Metal Blade clients, so it was and it was a different. I don't know. All these different factors, came into play. Teeth Machine was definitely. It's not regarded the way that clients is for some reason. I don't know. That's the way it seems to me.
It's fucking crazy to me too, because I think every single one of your guys' albums are fantastic, like from front to back. Like, I mean,
Thanks.
you guys didn't sound like anybody else, like, at all, and that's kind of what I mentioned earlier with like your guitar playing style. Like, you don't write riffs like a lot of other bands. You're not like super death metal. You're also not super deathcore, and you're not super thrashy. But it's just like this amalgam of all these different styles, and I feel like it does lean towards more like death metal sounding to me. But it's just, you're right though, with like 2004 to 2009, everything shifted so much that I guess I'm assuming by the time like you were starting to work on Fed Through the Teeth Machine, was there like any kind of pressure to worry about record sales, or was it like just like, let's just fucking write whatever we want, like who cares about that right now?
Well, we definitely we definitely always had those things in mind, but like money and sales and the business aspect of it. But that part didn't come into play very much when we were writing.
Mm-hmm.
One thing that's funny, Greg and I always say to each other, or we used to say, one of our friends' bands would come out with a record or something. Often at times it happened with like Between the Buried and Me would come out with a record, and it was like totally all over the place and weird, and there's all these crazy things that they would do on it, and we'd always see them play a song or listen to the record or something and say to each other, oh man, listen to that, they're just doing exactly what they want, they don't even care, they're just doing what they want, we should do that, we should do what we want. And it wasn't until like a couple of years had passed of us saying that to each other for some reason,
mm-hmm.
where we were like, well, you know what, we actually have done what we want, we just think that we don't. When we hear like a new band put out a record like them or Converge always does it too, and we'd be like, oh man, they're just doing what they want, why don't we do that? And we're just excited in the moment for them doing what they want. But when we sat and thought about it, we're like, well, we always did do what we want. We just made the music we wanted to make, and we did take into account whether or not people would like it, of course, because you're going to play it for people, and especially if you're a touring band. So like, I think that there's a lot of bands that came up, who were like 5+ years younger than us, that sort of came up in the in a time when like heavy music was on the rise, and a lot of bands were, because when we started touring, we were playing with like punk and hardcore bands mostly. We weren't connected to the metal scene at all, and shows were smaller at that point. It was like early 2000s. the 90s was obviously a time that people were paying attention to death metal, but that sort of, it sort of reverted to like a more, I mean, going to shows when I was young was like, it was an underground scene with people going to see death metal bands. And then in the mid 2000s, metal started getting attention, and Ozfest was bringing all these bands out that were like heavier. And I think with that, there were a lot of younger bands that sort of came into it with this business-minded mentality. Like, we're gonna have a manager and press kit and all this stuff. And we just sort of started like, hey, we're making cool shit that we like. Oops, it's a business, like some years later we're like, oh, it sort of just became the thing we were doing, which eventually we quit our jobs and it became a full-time thing.
Yeah.
It was never the plan. So because it was never the plan, we never really thought about it in terms of like, is this going to sell? Do people like this? We did think of that later on, but we were always just kind of like, oh, let's make this crazy thing. I mean, on Teeth Machine, there's a part where I forget the name of the song. I can remember the working title for some reason. The working title was Brad's Friend Ernie, but I think it's Tales of Martyrs and Disappearing Acts is the name of it. I think it's that one. There's like a goofy sound that I make of me going like, ugh. And, we were still putting shit like that in even up until Teeth Machine, because we were just like, wouldn't it be so ridiculous if we did this? Yeah, let's do it. Not thinking at all that it is silly and, just because we wanted to do it. So I don't know. I guess I guess our mentality has always just been do whatever we want, And
that was like one of my favorite things about touring with you guys is you all had excellent senses of humor, and you knew how to have fun even with your music. And I don't know, that came across to me as like more genuine than a lot of other bands that I toured with or met. It was just like, man, these guys are fucking fun and they do good music, and it's, it comes across in the music, in your live shows. And I mean, shit, when fucking Greg dressed up as the man in the yellow suit.
Oh yeah.
Oh my God. That was so
that
fucking
was the last
funny.
day of tour, I think.
Yeah, you're right.
Maybe.
And then you guys dressed up as Tosin one day.
Oh yeah. With the hats and we found like shirts at the thrift store we thought looked like something he'd wear.
Yeah. That was good.
The worst part about that was that he wasn't there for that show, because they went to the Deftones show down the street.
Oh, that's
and
right.
we were like, we dressed up like you guys and everything. they weren't even there. I think it was Salt Lake City. Because a venue I'd never played before until that tour. But
sounds right. Yeah.
I still have a picture somewhere on an old hard drive of me and Greg wearing those shirts that were really uncomfortable, and we played our guitars really high.
Yes, you did. That's right.
Yeah, I mean, we've always been real silly, even to the point of like self-sabotage. One thing that definitely we did that maybe, these days I try to not do is, we would just be like, oh, this is what people want. Well, we're going to do the opposite. Or, these people are coming to the show. Let's do something really embarrassing. Or, we have a chance to make a video. Let's have ourselves throwing sandwiches in each other's face. It was just like a lot. It was always a lot of that. And these days, I kind of, I try not to think quite the same way. But I don't know. We were just always not taking it seriously to a point of maybe taking it too not seriously. I don't know.
I mean, you got to have some fun with it, as much as I love metal, I really, it kind of irks me when bands take it just a little way too serious what they're doing.
Yeah. I mean, there's definitely a sweet spot. I don't like it when bands get super serious. I like it when a band puts on a show and things are creepy on stage and it has a vibe.
Mm-hmm.
I don't like it when people take that so far that they're like, no, I really am this scary guy, and it's like, just be yourself. I mean, some dudes are scary dudes for sure.
Yeah.
But, like there are definitely some black metal bands where I'm like, it's really cool on stage. I love it. I love the aesthetic, but like, some people take it too far and it's silly.
Yeah.
It's just, it takes away from the creepy mystique, because then you're like, oh, You know, like I'm okay with it being a show. You know, I used to have this thing. We used to kind of be like, oh man, why would you ever do this stage thing? You should just be real all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And for us, that meant being goofy. But now I'm kind of like, I like it when a band puts on a show. I think it's cool when there's pageantry. I mean, we all love Iron Maiden.
Hell yeah.
Bruce does all that shit, and we love it. So why can't everyone else try it? You know, and I think nowadays, the younger generation of bands is totally. There's a lot of younger bands who are totally embracing that that over the top, you know, like theatrical aspect, and I love it. I think it's great.
Yeah, I think I'm not like super into them anymore, but one thing I do appreciate about Behemoth is like their stage show. But I follow Adam like on, you know, Darsky on social media and stuff, and like he's always like doing yoga and like going to beaches and taking pictures of sunsets, and I'm like, that is the opposite of what you convey to everybody else.
Yeah, he's totally himself, but on stage he still puts on the same show, and it doesn't take away from how brutal and awesome their live set is.
Yeah. It's a balancing act, that's for sure. But I mean, you know, every band's going to be different in what they want to do and kind of project out into the world. And I think that goes into part of the art form of it.
Yeah, and it's, you know, and everybody's in a state of flux all the time too. Bands are changing, and people are changing, and fans are changing, and you know, sometimes you're gonna do really silly things and do tons of silly interviews throughout your career, and then later on you're gonna be like, hey, I want to put on a serious show a little bit, you know. Yeah. So I don't know. So with this record, I guess I don't know really how to ask this without making it sound weird. I don't know if it's going to sound weird. So before this record came out and when you were writing it, did you know it was going to be like the final kind of Red Chord record for now? Oh, Teeth Machine?
Yeah.
No, there was no plan for anything.
I didn't think so, because it didn't seem like you guys were kind of like ready to hang it up.
In 2009, when we were making that record, we were like 2007 into 8 was probably the high point for the band, I think. 2007 we did a headlining tour in the States that did really well, and we were really surprised by it. We didn't know it was gonna do that well. We had a stacked lineup, and those bands really draw, but we were like real surprised because I guess we didn't really have, we didn't take ourselves very seriously, and we didn't, it's not that we didn't believe in our band or have faith in our band, but we definitely didn't think we were like a big band, and we never really were. But that tour, we were like, wow, that was incredible. I can't believe how well that did, and we had done a tour right before it in Europe, also headlining or co-headlining with From a Second Story Window, and that tour did terribly, and so we were terrified that we're going to go headline in the States and have that also do really bad. So the tour did really well, and we had this good run. I mean, we were on the road all the time, so so it felt really good, and we were like moving at a good pace. And then we put out Pray for Eyes that year, and writing to the next one, we were like sort of on a roll. We were doing well, feeling good, and being excited. We were having the same kind of lineup problems we always have had, as most bands have. But we were pumped about the records, and so when we made Teeth Machine, we were all fired up, and we really, that's my favorite Red Chord record. I know everyone says they're like the most recent record. 10 years have passed, so it's not a new record to me anymore, but that's the record that I think is, I did feel kind of like that was the record that we were trying to make for a while. At least that was the one I was trying to make. When we got to that, it was like, yeah, this is what I've been trying to make the band sound like. Everybody has their own idea of what they want, obviously what they're trying to make the band be. But at the time, for me, that was like, yeah, this is what I think the Red Chord is, and we're making it. So I was happy with that. And then we did a bunch of touring in 2010, and that was like some ups and downs. Like more member situate, like Brad left in the beginning of that year, I think, or the end of the. I can't remember. Was that when he left? I think he quit at the end of the year of 2009. Oh yeah, that's right. We did a tour with Guar and Job for a Cowboy, and then
I remember that tour. Yeah,
and it was like 10 weeks long, and it was really grueling because it was fun. We had a great time with those guys, but it was like just a long tour with lots of driving, and there were days off because Guar was jumping on these Lamb of God dates. There was like this stacked thing where bands were jumping on. I know it wasn't Guar. I don't remember what was going on, but it was a lot of shows, and it was a long time, and it like took its toll. And Brad didn't want to be in the band anymore, and he quit. I think he quit in the middle of the tour, but kept doing. He did the tour, but he was like, "I'm basically done." I think that's what happened. I can't remember.
Damn.
But so we hit the rough patch of that type of thing, and then Mike came back, our original drummer. He did a few tours with us, and then.
Yeah, because I know Summer Slaughter was just you on guitar. You didn't have a second guitar player on that tour.
We started being a 4-piece in like 2008. So
okay,
end of 2008 I think is when we were, or beginning of 2009 is like when we decided to be a 4-piece. So Teeth Machine, we're a 4-piece, and then we continued forward as that.
Yeah, because I remember talking to you about a song on that record, and I was like, "Oh man, this song's really cool. I wish you would play it live." And I was really oblivious to the fact that like you didn't have two guitar players, and you're like, "Oh yeah, I can't play that one because the leads go on at the same time as this part." And I was like, "Oh shit, I didn't even put two and two together there. That makes fucking a lot of sense now."
Yeah, I mean that's something I said then, but I feel like that was a cop out. I should have figured out a way to play it because I think that you should figure out a way to play any song live, even if you can't play all the parts. I mean, you're not ever going to make it sound like the record anyway.
Yeah, that's
and when
true.
we did the Stomach Earth set, I couldn't play all the parts. I had some tracks. I had a drum machine. Craig was playing a lot of stuff. I played as much as I could, but I would rather do it and play the songs than not do it, So,
and I guess to be fair, it was like probably one of my first interactions with you on that tour too. So it was very like Chris Farley-esque of like, hey, that song you wrote that's really cool? Yeah, it'd be awesome if you could play that.
Yeah. I wonder what song it was.
Oh, it was Mouthful of Precious Stones.
Oh, you know what? We did play that.
Did you?
Did we? We didn't play it on that tour. We did play it later.
Okay.
We played it when I think we either played it in Japan a couple years ago or when we played this festival in Texas. I think we played it in Texas. I think I figured out a way to play it that made sense. And because Guy always wanted to play it. It was like his favorite song on the record. And I was always like, no, we can't play that one.
It's a good one.
But I like playing it. It's fun. It's hard on guitar. There's lots of stupid things I did to myself. I was one of those songs where I was like, why did I write this? This is hard to play.
It definitely has some really intricate pattern work in there. I think that's why I like it quite a bit. I think that and like the first two tracks, Demoralizer, Hour of Rats, that's Demoralizer is such an excellent way to start that record. That is,
thanks.
It is, it just kind of kicks you in the teeth, no pun intended, right off the bat.
Yeah, I'm happy with that one. I still like that record. Of all the, it's hard to like some of your old stuff sometimes, but I like that one. I think it's what I wanted us to be then, and I don't know if how much the other guys felt that way, but they definitely are happy. We're happy with it then.
It makes a lot of sense you saying that.
Stuff.
If you really think about that record and you put the other ones into context with it, it does sound like an amalgamation of everything that came before it.
Some people say it sounds more straightforward and it's less like quirky, but I don't know. I mean, I didn't ever like my approach to the band was I didn't really bring any quirky ideas in as much, like the weird kind of stuff, like weird little rhythms and things that were sort of oddball kind of things usually were Kevin, our original guitar player, or later on Greg kind of worked some stuff like that in. I guess I was always the one that wrote the more straightforward stuff in the band, because I don't know, I kind of approached it more as a death metal band
Yeah.
Just because of what I grew up listening to, I guess.
So when you had how long did it take you to kind of write everything? Like when you were working on the record, as far as like
I don't
timeline, about a year and a half, probably.
We probably started writing it like maybe at the end of 2008 or something like that. It probably took us about a year to work it all out. And yeah, when all is said and done, probably about a year. I think we started recording it in the summer of 2009.
Okay.
Like early summer. So maybe less than a year, probably like 8 months.
It's pretty good. Yeah. Especially like turnaround from like Pray for Eyes. That's really good timing, I would think.
Pray for Eyes, I think Pray for Eyes came out in 2007.
Mm-hmm.
Pray for Eyes, we probably had about the same amount of time to write, but we had a bunch more. We had a lot more touring during that time, so I don't know. Well, we had more people writing for Pray for Eyes. We had 2 guitar players, and so there were 3 of us writing like arrangements and riffs. So it probably came together faster for that reason.
Now, were you guys always one of those bands that like had everything ready to go when you were recording, or were you still kind of tweaking things as they came up in the studio or wherever you guys recorded?
We pretty much, I mean, we were usually pretty prepared. There's always a few things that you're not so sure about. I think I'm sure there are bands who go in and do exactly the thing they planned, but for me, it's always been like, there's always at least a couple things that we're not sure about, or that we end up, or maybe we change them in the studio because we decide that they don't work anymore. Mm-hmm. With like some records, like Beyond the Sixth Seal, one of the records, the second record, I was writing lyrics in the studio. So there was like, sometimes that happens, but with Red Chord, we're usually prepared. Sometimes, yeah, we were always pretty prepared. We kind of had to be, because it was a lot we had to have practiced the songs a lot because they were hard. They're hard songs to write for me.
Mm-hmm.
And, so there's like a lot of scrutinizing before we went into record. With Teeth Machine, we were recording with our old guitar player, Johnny Fay. So we were more relaxed, but we were definitely still really prepared, I think.
And so when you went in to record with him, were you guys still kind of like, I know every band kind of does it a little different from talking to so many, but like, were you guys doing everything like piece by piece, like guitars one day, vocals one day, or were you doing like that live thing where you all just kind of play at once?
Oh yeah, we always do it. We always do like drums, then guitars, then bass. We never do. We did our first record. We did it live. Actually, most of that record is actually live, and we kept the scratch tracks from the live session, and then we doubled those guitars. But basically, that's like a band playing in a room, because we recorded the first record we recorded and mixed in 3 days. So it was like, wow, really, really fast. And we didn't really have any money. I think we had like $1,000 from, or like $1,200 or something like that from what was at the time Robodog Records, and we put in some of our own money to finish it. So we were just like in and out. But with every record after that, we tracked individual instruments.
And I gotta feel like too that it's got to be better to kind of take your time with that kind of thing, you know, to finally be at that place as far as like, you know, getting help from a label or wherever the money's coming from as far as like recording goes, to kind of, you know, not rush everything.
Yeah, it sucks to be rushed. I mean, you don't, especially when you're making something you really care about. You're like, you want to take the time, and you want to be, you know, you want to feel confident that it's good, and you had a chance to go back and check to make sure you didn't fuck something up. Like, to me, these days I'd rather work something out. To sometimes what we'll do now, because of technology, is with a project, you know, like Sixth Seal, I'm recording most of the instruments at home, but sometimes we'll be like, oh, we'll track this stuff at home, and then we'll bring it in reamp, because we want to take the time to get it perfect. rather than booking studio time and being under the gun.
Yeah.
I can't, like, when I think about bands like in that Metallica documentary where they're paying for the studio to rehearse in, and I just, like, that's such an old mentality that bands, I guess, used to do, but I just can't imagine booking studio time, paying all that money for the studio to write your record. Like, you can't write that at home or in the practice space. The practice space is like $300 a month or whatever. The studio is like $300 a day. Like, I never got that. I'm like, they're just throwing money away for no reason.
Yeah, but it was just like the status quo back then. I don't think they really knew any better.
Now it's like so the opposite, that kids are making records in their bedrooms, and
fuck.
It's but yeah, I like to be prepared and I like to have time. If I can be in a studio with an engineer, I want to be totally ready to go, so I'm not wasting any time, and then I can use all the time I have to, like, get my performance perfect.
And I think something else too, this is just my opinion, you recorded the first album in 3 days. There is something a little, punk rock and kind of awesome about that too, on the same aspect, because it's like, holy shit, this was done in 3 days and it still sounds like this good. I mean,
it's fun. Well, that's due to the engineer being awesome. Yeah. Andrew Schneider was just really good, and we're a little sloppy on it, obviously, and we're also real young. I think it was like, we recorded it, and we were all like 19, 20 years old. So, which, kids now are 19 and they fucking shred circles around me. But at that time, I don't know. I was happy with what we could do, and it was just sort of like, it was just it was like, if it was punk rock, it was because it was out of necessity. We just didn't have any money, and we did what we could to make a record. We actually did. I think we. I don't remember much about what leading up to that. That was a long time ago. That was what year? 2001.
Yeah, almost 20 years.
Damn. Yeah, coming up. It's crazy. But that was such a long. I don't remember a lot of the process, but I do remember when we wrote "Dreaming in Dog Years." We stayed up until, we were like at Mike's house all night writing, and we were just so fired up about it. We were like, "Oh, this is so crazy! I can't believe that we were writing this." And we just were like really in the, like just in the zone. That's like one of the only memories I have of writing for that record.
Who knew? That's like the one song everybody always wants to hear.
Yeah. And some of the things we were saying, I remember we're silly. We're just like, I remember at one point we were like, what are we going to do with this end part? Oh, let's just play each riff from the whole song once. That was somebody's suggestion, and we did it, and it's in the song.
Damn, that is crazy. So I guess kind of closing up on this last Red Chord record here before I want to talk to you about all your newer stuff. How does it feel, even though all the other records in your discography have already surpassed 10 years, but how does it feel having just like this final one be at 10 years old now?
It doesn't really have an effect on me other than just being like, wow, that was a long time ago.
Yeah.
The band, things are so different these days, at least in my life, that I feel, and this isn't meant to sound this isn't meant to sound like to be any kind of statement of the band, but
sure,
it feels like that kind of feels like another lifetime to me now. It feels like it was a long time ago. It's been a long time since we were on the road. Like, we played some shows here and there, but it's been a long time since we've like been a band, really. That it feels like it feels like a dream that I had a long time ago. And
yeah.
I remember this dream, and now it's not my life, but it was a dream I had. So oftentimes Greg and I will be working on stuff, and we'll talk about something from tour or making a record or something. We'll be like, wow, remember that? Can you believe we did that? That's funny. So yeah, that's really the only effect it has on me. It's not like, I don't know. I'm kind of neutral about it. I'm proud of what we did, and you know.
I mean, you should be. I feel like every single one of those records were game changing in their own way.
They were, yeah. I mean, they were definitely points of growth for me personally. They were, you know, I can say that they were, you know, what's the word I'm looking for?
Cathartic.
They were formative.
Formative.
For me,
okay.
As a writer and a person, you know, the tours, and I think back a lot to the process of writing and the tours we did and stuff, and I'm always like, oh man, what a little asshole I was to the guys in my band. I often think, like, especially working with the Weary Wounds guys now, I think a lot about the things that I used to not do, like not listen to people. You know, I was more difficult to work with in a band. I remember being like, if you don't like this riff, then we're not using any of them. You know, like, have this like kind of a digging my heels in attitude all the time. And now I'm like, wow, I would never act like that when I'm writing with someone. I would now I try to hear people out and work with them rather than against them. But I guess those are the things you learn. That's really some of my big takeaways. I do think of a lot of things that I'm not going to do anymore. You know, like I'm not going to, you know, I like working with people in a different way. I don't know. It's hard to explain. I think also I needed to make records by myself too. And I wasn't doing it then. And that was kind of, now I am doing that. So it gives me that release that keeps me from being a big asshole to be in a band with.
Well, I think that was the thing kind of after, you know, it was like, okay, the Red Chord's not going to be putting out any more records. It's like, that's fine. But the fact that you were still working on stuff, that's what intrigued me. And I was like, cool, if anybody, you know, ever liked the Red Chord, they should just follow everything that you're doing now. I mean, it's the same thing. He's still the, you know, I guess for lack of a better word, same musician, even though you were like growing as a musician too. It's just the work, you know, if you care about the musician, you care about the work they're doing. So it was nice for me to see you go on to do like Stomach Earth and Nightkin, and now, you know, being in Wear Your Wounds, it's like, well, yeah, this all makes sense. Like, why wouldn't he keep making music after the Red Chord? I mean, that's just, it's kind of in your blood, you know?
I always thought it was funny that people were like, where'd you guys go? And I'm like, we didn't go anywhere. We're still here. Yeah. And then people put up things that say like, you know, or like they're on a hiatus or whatever. And I'm like, well, what is the actual amount of time that defines hiatus? Like when you get off tour, you don't go immediately back on tour. You take some downtime and then you write a record. And just because a band hasn't put out a record in a while doesn't mean they broke up. It doesn't mean they're on hiatus. It just means they didn't put out, like, the first record and Clients, there were like 3 years between those.
Yeah,
you know, like
pretty long time.
So what's the difference between 3 years or 10 years? I mean, some bands put out records every 10 years, like a Tool, you know, like Tool puts out records every, like, forever. It takes forever for them to put a record out. And
Carcass.
No one says Tool. Carcass. Yeah. Like lots of bands. So I always thought it was funny that people would be like, oh, where'd you guys go? And it's like, well, we did used to tour excessively. Actually, I think we toured probably too much. We were on the road so much that I think, you know, if you're on the road all the time, eventually someone's like, I'll catch them next time. They'll be back. Yeah. You know? And then, I don't know, you kind of oversaturate yourself. So there's that. And then, I don't know. It's just, that's a thing I can't shake. I'm always thinking about that because I'm always like, you know, what defines hiatus anyway, or whatever, you know? But, I don't know.
I mean, it's cool that people still love the band. I mean, obviously they're never going to stop. Those records are always going to exist and people can always listen to them. But I mean, like, getting so bent out of shape because you guys aren't playing shows or making new material. I mean, move on.
I get people being frustrated, but once in a while someone will write like, what the fuck? Play a show. And I'm like,
Jesus.
Wow. I'm not your fucking, you know, servant.
Dance, monkey, dance.
And also, and when people say, there was one point when we were playing a show, I posted like a link to a fest that we played, and someone was like, no dates in this city, so fuck them or something. And wow. I was like, we played like 2,000 shows in our career as a band. I'm sorry that you didn't make it to one of those, but fuck these guys is a little harsh.
Yeah, no, I agree, man. Still, people get so bent out of shape that, like, if they're not coming to your city, I see it on, Instagram and Facebook whenever tours are announced. It's just like, oh, why aren't you coming here? Like, yeah, it's just like, man.
Someone's always going to be mad about something, I guess. But yeah, I mean, it's a bummer, especially like living in Boston. Whenever some band comes over and does like 2 shows in the country and that's it, they do New York and they do LA, and it's like, yeah, it's nearby. It's a little frustrating to see they don't do Boston, but they do New York. But I'm not going to get mad at them because I get it. I mean, I don't get bummed out about this stuff. I just think it's funny that people get real worked up about something, and and it's like, yeah, at this point we haven't played shows in years, but it doesn't happen really. That doesn't really happen anymore. At least not to me. Once in a while I'll post something new and someone will say, where's the Red Chord? And I'm like, I don't know. We're talking about this right now.
Yeah. Kind of off topic here. I know what you mean about like bands playing shows in only certain cities. I'm seeing all those like West Coast Ulver shows, and I'm like, fuck, man. Oh, yeah. Tickets only this much money. Like,
they just played New York.
I know. And I fucking missed that one. And then last year, it's funny. Was it last year? I don't know. Whenever Dillinger did their final shows, I did the opposite thing. I was living on the West Coast still, and I flew to fucking New York to see those 3 shows, and didn't regret a single minute of it. But it's like, June's not too far away. I think I could get a ticket and go stay with some friends and go see them. It'd be worth it.
Yeah, I mean, if it's a band you really want to see, go take the trip, if you can. I don't know.
Yeah.
I've never really been, this is kind of ridiculous to say as a person who plays shows, I've never really been that excited about seeing bands. I mean, I was when I was younger, for a little bit, but there are a lot of bands who put on great shows, and I really like watching them, but I don't know. I rather would just listen to the record most of the time and just kind of like, even my favorite bands, I would rather just listen to the record and absorb it, Mm-hmm. I did see Ulver in Prague, and I was really happy to see them. And they put on a really awesome set.
I believe
but
it.
I don't know if I would go see them if they were here. Like, even though I love them, I think they're awesome. I think I would go see. There's like 5 bands that I would like make an effort to see. I think it's like Goldfrapp. If Goldfrapp ever came to anywhere near here, I think they played New York once and I missed it, but I think I would see Goldfrapp and like Ruins of Everest.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, man, like when I was touring as well, like I would not go see a show for years after that. It took me a long time to want to go to shows, and then I think I pick and choose now which ones I kind of go to, but even then I get there and I'm like, that was all right, I guess.
Yeah, it's weird to say, but a lot of the time if I go to a show, I'm watching it, even if I love it so much, there's still a part of me that's like, I can't wait for this to be over.
Yeah.
Even though I love this, I don't want it to end, and later on I'm going to be like, damn it, why didn't I enjoy the moment? For some reason, I don't know, it's a character flaw, I guess.
So where are your wounds? So I know like Jacob Bannon and all those guys are kind of in your area where you live. So how did you just know them from like mutually being in the scene together? Like how did you get involved with that?
Well, so I think we all sort of knew each other. I mean, obviously Jake knew all of us, but mm-hmm. I had met each one of those guys in different settings over the years. But I wasn't like close to anybody. I just knew them, like we had toured with Coliseum when Chris Maggio was in that band. And so I knew him from then, but we were only on tour for like 10 days together. Yeah. But right away we were like, oh, we love this guy. Even though we didn't know him very well. And then like we had toured with Hatebreed a bit, but I'd met Sean a few times on tour, and we'd sort of hung out in a group, but I didn't really know him. And then Adam had met at various mutual friend things and shows, and we just also didn't know each other very well. All those dudes I have gotten to know a lot better, obviously, now that I'm in a band with them, and it's been great because it's this weird mishmash of total weirdos who all are super intense, weird guys in completely different ways, and all bring something different to the table that makes this like perfect storm of like weird chaos. It's great. And then Jake I'd known from touring with Converge. Like I think we first toured together end of 2005 or something, but we didn't talk really on that tour. I think we talked about like a black metal record once, but we didn't know each other too well till later on. It was probably like, I think 2009 I moved up to Salem, Mass, which at the time 3/4 of Converge was living up in that area.
Nice.
And Nate and I would get breakfast a lot. And so then I started kind of hanging out with that circle of North Shore people. And then at some point, I guess I was living in Salem, and when it must have been like 2012 or 13, I think, maybe 2012. Jake asked me if I wanted to play guitar, if I'd play guitar on like a solo on a song that was it was like a Wear Your Wounds thing. It was like he'd done that Super Machiner project, was kind of like the precursor to Wear Your Wounds.
Yeah, that's what I was saying, or I was thinking. Sorry, is that Super Machiner? That reminds me a lot of that first Wear Your Wounds stuff and where it's at now.
Yeah, and that I think they did that like years before, and then so he had one track online that was a split with Ben Chisholm, who plays with Chelsea Wolfe. He writes a bunch of like he's really talented writer.
I'm like vaguely familiar with him, but I know his work obviously from Chelsea Wolfe more than anything.
He's contributed a bunch to this to the Wear Your Wounds record, the one
Nice.
we just finished.
Okay, nice.
And his contributions are awesome. He's really talented. So he did a split. He had a project called Revelator, and there was a split, Wear Your Wounds and Revelator, and it's just 2 songs. And the Revelator song is awesome. The Wear Your Wounds song is great too. So at that point, Jake just sent me a thing. It was like this droney, very simple, creepy kind of ambient thing, and I just played a lead over it. And then we were just sort of talking about stuff, ideas. He was like, I'm making this record and I'm playing everything on it. And we were having that conversation about working things to death and like letting things go and making records where you have so much control that you have to at some point relinquish that control and let it out into the world. And he was making that record around the time that I was making, like right when I finished the Stomach Earth record, I think. He'd been working on it for years. Like he'd been like here and there, like pieces. So I started, giving him some stuff here and there, like leads or whatever. And then we just kind of like, I don't know, we're just kind of talking about it. And I contributed a bunch of parts for that first record. And then we started talking about playing shows. And originally the lineup kind of shifted a little. There was a group of us. We recorded a song. And then that group sort of changed. And then Maggio came into the picture and he started recording some stuff. It's like a very amorphous start of like, just like a really like nebulous shifting of people and ideas and things. And it was Jake's solo record with contributions of other people. And then we played some shows and he assembled a band of these guys, like I think in the beginning, like Sean and I both played on the first record.
Mm-hmm.
And then we started making other tracks. I see my memory is terrible. Now I'm trying to remember the timeline of how it all happened. But we recorded recorded a single for New Noise. There was the song Arthritic Heart, and Maggio played drums on that, and I played some guitar stuff to this thing that Jake had put together, and it just started to morph. Then we got booked for Roadburn. I think Roadburn was a thing as the lineup was coming together, and so we had to play the songs live. So we started to get together, figure out how we were going to make them sound live, because they were definitely not written with a live setting in mind. They were just written as a record.
Mm-hmm.
So they started to change as all different people were playing them. And, you know, Jake played drums on the record, and then Maggio ended up playing some of the drums. I think some of the drums are played by Jake still, but originally he played the drums on everything.
Damn.
But then Maggio came into the picture, and he was like, "Oh, Maggio, I want Maggio to play on it because he's a ridiculous drummer." And so the band's it started to turn into like a band at some point. And then we were playing shows, and the songs were changing a bit because we're playing them kind of like vibing off each other, just like jamming on these noisy parts. Some of the songs got longer. Some of them got like blasty and black metal-y at times. They just changed live a lot until, leading up to last year. And we did the tour where we did Roadburn. And then it was that point we did the second Roadburn that the band did. We kind of gelled as like a band. And then we made this record. When we made this last record, we made it like a band would. Instead of being like a solo project, it became like 5 guys doing a thing together. Plus, 6 guys, because Ben had a lot of contributions too.
I think you explained that pretty much perfectly, because from my perspective, watching it over the years, it did kind of seem to start out as just Jake's solo project, and then you were playing on it, and then these other guys were just playing on it. But then seeing it as you started playing live shows, and then now seeing it as oh yeah, this is the band. And it's kind of funny because I don't feel like, or maybe I'm just not reading the right things, but I feel like nobody's really mentioning that you guys are kind of a super group if you look at it, with everybody that's in it. It's, you guys are such talented musicians across the board. And yeah, I think,
well, I do like the fact that everybody in this band is so busy. Everybody has a million things going on, and which keeps it interesting. It makes it a little tricky at times to get us all in the same room.
Oh, I bet.
Because everybody's in other bands, and everybody has all these things going on. Like Sean's selling honey that he and his wife harvest.
Nice.
You can buy the Martin Hives honey through the Deathwish online store.
That's cool.
And and then he's got a million projects, and he's at Twitching Tongues tours, and then he's got other hip hop projects and stuff he's doing, and then Adam's in Nomad Stones, and now Caven's doing stuff again. So yeah. Adam's got all that stuff going on. And obviously Jake has Converge and the label and his artwork. Honestly, I don't know. He has kids too. I don't know how he does it. He manages to do all this. He does so much. I can't, I don't have children, mm-hmm. and I have a hard time managing everything. But to have children and do that, it's huge. So then Maggio has a CBD business he's starting, and then he's filling in for Ben for Mutoid Man, and he's doing session work, and then I've got all these projects. So we all have so much shit going on at all times. It's it's just and the best thing that is that everybody's on board for everything. Nobody even hesitates if somebody's hey, you want to make another record? Yes. Are we gonna make a record? Want to start a new band? Yes. Everybody's just yep, do everything all the time. I love it, and it's great.
So I'm assuming the logistics of trying to write this record were kind of hard because of that, or was it easier than people would think? As far as everybody being so busy.
Well, in the beginning it was Well, as far as people being busy, it was not really. The technology definitely helped us a lot. We were using, we use like cloud storage to share stuff. So we're just sending each other ideas and uploading things. And eventually we got in a room right before we went in the studio. We spent a week in the practice space after things had sort of been fleshed out in recordings. We got spent a week in the practice space playing it together. And actually, with this record, we went in not as prepared as past records I've been on. I don't know about the other guys, but I know that we went in there with a lot of decisions still to be made. But it worked out because there's a really fluid nature to this project. So it's a lot. And you can do that with this kind of project. You can't do that with like technical music, but with like this like sort of dreamy, slower stuff, you can do that. Some songs were more rigid and together, and some songs were pretty nebulous when we, there was a little bit of writing that went on in the studio this time. But it was great. I mean, this really natural thing happened with us playing together, and I can't believe we made this record. I'm so excited about it. It's like, I can't wait for people to hear it. It's all over the place. It's just like,
really,
it's like, I don't know. There are big, heavy, slow, cinematic parts. There's like more upbeat songs. This stuff, it runs the gamut of like emotions, I feel like, but it's very dismal, but at the same time there are like parts that are not total misery. So it's interesting.
I like that. I mean, especially too with everybody's kind of different backgrounds in music, but all kind of being the same. Whatever each person kind of brought to the writing, I'm sure really helped shape and mold that.
Yeah, like you can really hear everybody's personality on this record, and I love that. It's like, and I think that one of the things I like about playing in this band so much is that because we all have, there's like common threads that run through all of us, that like bind us together, but there are also major differences between us that really like complement each other. Like we all bring different strengths to the table, and together I feel like we do all these things that I want a band to do, so I love that. I love the fact that like my weaknesses are someone else's strengths in this band.
Yeah, okay, that's really interesting, because I guess I really never would have thought of that if you're like kind of struggling with something, or not fully confident in doing something, another person can kind of be like, hey, do this, or like help you out with it.
Yeah, like Adam and I are a good example. Adam and I are very different guitar players stylistically.
Yeah.
And in a complementary way. So like, even though we both, there's like a lot of things we have in common, obviously, but there are a lot of like, we're listening to lots of different music, and the stuff we're into is different in some senses. And for that reason, the pieces fit together so well. Like I am more of a technical player. Adam is more of a textural player. So like where I wouldn't know what to do with, how do we make this sound full, or how do we make this sound, like Adam will have this solution for that, or where somebody needs some more technical kind of place, then I can do that. Like are both, it's like we're playing the same instrument. We're playing it from such a different perspective that, like we cover all the bases, which I really, and I've learned so much about guitar and writing from playing in this band. I've learned to pull back a lot too. The Red Chord was like, the mentality was always like, we played this riff twice, that's too many times. Play it 1.5 times, or play it once and then change to something else. People are gonna get bored. Whereas Where Your Wounds is like, like, wait, hold on, don't rush this, or like, don't you don't need to worry about playing this part too many times. Let's just like get into the feel of this part. It's been really educational for me.
Yeah, it sounds like to me, especially, it's really helped you grow even more as a musician and as a writer from like doing this project. Does that make you feel like a lot more creatively fulfilled, even though it's a little scary that like you may not know how to kind of write to a certain aspect of it?
It's never very scary for me because I've, especially in a band like this, there are so many people contributing that you don't need to show up and have a bunch of ideas right away, because there's a bunch of people contributing. And also we bounce off each other so much, like I spent a lot of time writing alone, and that's fine, but I forgot how great it is to write with other musicians when you can hear their idea and that sparks something in you. When you're just sitting at home writing by yourself, you've only got your own spark, and if you can't light that, can't get that fire started on your own, that's it, Whereas you're working with somebody else and they're like, well, what if we did this? And you're like, holy shit, I never even thought of that, because I'm coming from a different angle, And there were definitely parts on this record where somebody would have an idea that I'd be like, holy shit, I love that, and I never would have thought of that in a million years,
Yeah.
So there's like little tiny parts that happen all throughout this record where I'm like, oh, that little nuance right there is just crucial, and I never would have come up with that, or something that turns into some huge thing, like, it's hard to explain, but it's been a really positive experience playing with these guys.
Did you guys record at God City, or where did you record? I saw it on Instagram, but I'm spacing, and for some reason my brain wants to say God City because of Jacob.
We did record at God City, but
okay.
We also recorded elsewhere.
Gotcha.
We did most of it at God City. We did drums, rhythm guitars, pretty much all leads, and vocals, but some vocals were recorded. I recorded some vocals at my home, and then
nice.
some vocals recorded. Jake recorded some vocals. I think he was at Deathwish. I think we also recorded a lot of Jake's vocals at various places. We recorded more vocals at God City later, and then there were some guest vocals recorded in I think San Francisco, or no Chicago. I can't remember the engineer's name. Sanford Parker. And then Ben recorded a bunch of his stuff where he lives out in, I don't think he's in Oakland.
Oh, nice.
So some stuff was recorded. So stuff was recorded all over the place. But most of it was at God City. The bulk of it, just about everything, was recorded at God City. And then Kurt mixed the record. So I would say, 95% of it was done at God City.
Kind of off the record here, but Kurt's always been like one of my bucket list guests to get on this fucking podcast, man. I swear. Dude's so prolific.
He's got a massive body of work, and he's got a lot of interesting things to say.
Yeah. So how much time do you got? Because I do want to talk to you about the Beyond the Sixth Seal stuff too, but I don't want to, if you got shit to do, I don't want to keep you.
No, I'm good. I probably should wrap up in a little while, but I'm good for now.
Yeah. So let's talk about that, because I mean that's kind of been one of your other labors of love here too.
So that project, speaking of records that take forever, that we had some of these songs written in 2008, and most of the record was written 10 years ago. So we're finally putting it out. And I'm not really sure. I can't remember what the catalyst was, but at some point a year or two ago, we were like, let's just finish this thing. And we'd been getting together, like Brendan and Greg and I would get together anyway, and sometimes to play music and sometimes just to go get food or whatever. But we decided to really take it seriously, finish it, because we had this full record, and we did. So then last summer we recorded the drums with Johnny Faye, and now I'm tracking. I finished most of Greg's bass. Greg came up and recorded a couple days ago, or yesterday. and he has a couple tracks left to do, and then I did a bunch of guitars today. I'd like to get it all tracked within the next like 2 weeks so I can start mixing it. And then yeah, it's another one on the list. I've got like probably 8 releases in mind for this year. I don't know if they'll all come out this year, but they'll all at least be released or begin recording by the end of the year.
That's just crazy.
So yeah, there's a lot. I mean, some of them are, the thing is, some of these releases are mostly written, some of them are mostly recorded, and some of them are just the start, like Stomach Earth. I want to release an EP this year. I think it'll be an EP. And I've written a bunch of material, but it's a little bit on the back burner while we finish everything got put on the back burner while the Wear Your Wounds record was being recorded.
Yeah.
And then Six Seals next in line because it's almost done. So then there's another project I have called Dualitist that I wrote most of it already, and it just needs to be mixed. A lot of it's recorded. It's like a weird electronic stuff.
Oh, really?
It's kind of gloomy and slow with vocoder vocals, and it's gonna be kind of weird.
I've gotten into a lot of that stuff myself over the past few years, like the whole like synthwave kind of darker horror theme kind of stuff too. Like I love that shit.
Yeah, I mean, you might like this then. It has some elements of that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
It's like the EP is all the lyrics are written. It's sort of a concept record. All the lyrics are written from the perspective of like a sentient space station, like supercomputer, that something horrible happened and the human crew is all killed off. So the artificial intelligence of the space station is just drifting through space, reciting these sad poetic phrases.
Oh wow, damn.
So because filled with a bunch of dead bodies from some horrible thing that happened.
So I'm assuming like that's where like the vocoder kind of aspect of it comes in to make it sound a little more robotic.
Yeah, I mean, it just sort of all came about on its own. I was doing stuff with vocoder, and then I was writing those lyrics, so it just sort of made sense.
Nice.
Because at the time I was like, I can't sing on anything. I don't know how to really sing, but I actually sing on the Wear Your Wounds record, and it was another one of those things where I was like, oh, I could sing on this part. Fuck it, I'm gonna do it. And actually, I didn't hate it, but it's the first time I've sang like clean on a record since, I don't know, in a long time.
That's awesome, man. I think it's cool hearing about like all the kind of eclectic work that you do, because you've done so much since the Red Chord that it's kind of hard to even like pin down the style of music you do in any one thing. Like, yeah, you do some metal, you do some non-metal stuff too, and I think that speaks volumes about the kind of musician that you are.
Well, I hope. Yeah, I mean, I just make the things that I want to make, and there are a lot of records I want to make, and I'm lucky enough that I get to make them, and people sometimes listen to them. Like I'm lucky enough that I have the opportunity to do this.
Yeah.
So I'm just trying to get them all done. There's really like I have this spreadsheet of records that I have planned, and it's really overly stupidly ambitious, and definitely going to be a massive undertaking, and it's real kind of silly. It's funny how many things I'm planning on doing, and
give me a taste of what's on there. Like, what are we talking here?
So I'm gonna need to actually click the list open so I can remember. So Wear Your Wounds was the first on the list for this year. That's now done. I'm just going down my list right now.
Okay, cool.
Six Seals in the works. Stomach Earth would be the next thing potentially. There's another death metal project that we'll be talking about later.
Okay.
Unraveler I'm gonna do an Unraveler EP. There's Dualists, the project I just mentioned. At some point, we're gonna do more Nightkin material. I know there's already a few songs
Nice.
that they started writing that are Dave started writing, and they're crushing and fast and ridiculous, thrashy, awesome stuff. I have to write some lyrics for them. I wrote a little bit. I don't know. Those guys have been like tied up with other things too, but that record, whenever that comes about, that'll be in there. I have a project called Piece of Shit Family that's grindcore that I haven't done anything with yet. And then there's an ambient thing that I'm putting together, and that's it for the moment.
That's pretty hefty and awesome.
Oh, there's one more project. I didn't list it for some reason on this list. There's a project called Inhumanist that I have. It's the closest thing to the Red Chord. It's like technical death metal-y sounding stuff, and it's just a project. So far it's just a drum machine, and I track everything, and it's like I don't know. It kind of sounds like, I feel like people who like the Red Chord will like it. Probably. Okay. It's more death metal than the Red Chord, but it's kind of like that. And there's a couple songs I'm gonna post probably some point. I don't really have a plan with it yet, but just some songs I wrote, and yeah, that's about it for that.
And isn't Greg doing some other stuff too? I think, isn't he in a band called like Wormwood?
Yeah, Greg's in two other bands. Wormwood, which is like a doomy, sludgy band, and then Labor Hex, which is okay. That's like a rock, like noise rock, kind of dirty sounding. I don't know how to describe them. They're awesome. Their riffs kind of have a Voivod vibe, but they're like noise rock. They're really good, and they're working on stuff. They have a record you can listen to. I think it's
the
on
name
Bandcamp.
sounds familiar, and I probably have not heard it, but the name sounds familiar. That's for sure.
I think they have a Bandcamp. Yes, they do. They have a release on Bandcamp. 4 songs. Okay. It's really good. Laborhex.bandcamp. And they're working on more stuff too. And then Greg also put out another record that he doesn't want anyone to know about for some reason. No, he doesn't care. He just doesn't like to talk about his stuff for some reason. He put out a record called Deadlights a couple years ago. And that, I don't know if he's going to do more of that. He's kind of busy with these bands and the bands he's in with me. Greg and I are in like 5 bands together, plus the bands that we do separately. So we already have like a lot. So I don't know if he'll do more Deadlights or not, but
yeah, I think I remember him working on that or mentioning it like a few years back, and then I never heard anything else about it.
Yeah, they did the record and he put it out, and he was like, "It's online. Don't tell anybody about it." I of course shared the link to it. I played a solo on one of the songs, nice. And I shared the link, and he was like, "Oh yeah," but it's out there and it's good. It's he wrote the song, or he and Brendan wrote the songs together. Brendan Roach is the drummer of Six Seal and also Deadlights, and they wrote that stuff together. It was like kind of Greg's brainchild, and he sings on it and plays guitar, and it's cool. It's like I don't know what to compare it to. I don't know that I can compare it to anything. It actually, to me, sounds like a lot of the it has like elements of a lot of the things that Greg listens to, and I recognize it, from being in a band with him for so long, listening to like CDs he puts on and stuff. It has like echoes of a lot of that stuff, but I can't always call it out. But it's cool.
That's awesome. You guys are still working together. I mean, it's, I wouldn't expect otherwise, because you guys have known each other for so long, and you're still both like in the music scene. So that's cool, man. That's awesome.
Yeah. I mean, we've definitely, I haven't kept in touch with most people, honestly. I'm not good at keeping in touch, and you get older and you keep in touch with less people.
It's hard.
Greg and I have always, we've kept, we've stayed, friends for a long time and worked on stuff together. And, we don't, these days we're busier and it's harder to get ourselves in the same room, but, we always make some kind of effort. So I probably see like a handful of people. I probably see Greg the most, so we're still close friends and everything.
Yeah, you'll have to tell him to come on the podcast too. It's been a while. I had him on my old podcast like a long time ago, and that was probably one of the funnest ones I ever did.
What was the old one?
It was just something.
I never heard that.
Yeah, it was just it died off and it never really went anywhere. But it was just called Everything We Like Is Awesome, and it was just me and my friend talking.
I do remember you doing that.
Yeah,
I don't remember. I didn't hear that episode though.
Dude, I wish I still had it. There was some funny ass shit in there because Greg just cracks me up.
Really ridiculous, especially in that setting.
Yeah. Damn, dude.
If he and I do interviews together, we're always like, I'm way less serious around him because I can't help it. We're just like turn into children.
Yeah. Yeah, that's what I was like. All right, cool. We're gonna have Greg and Mike. This is gonna be fucking hilarious, and also I don't know if we'll get to talk about anything, but it'll still be fun. Yeah,
I'm sure we would have joked about poop and all kinds of dumb shit at this point. We would have been talking about diarrhea for like a half hour. Probably talk about none of the projects.
Oh man. Well, Mike, dude, thank you so much for taking the time to do this, man. This is fucking fun. You'll have to
totally
come on again sometime in the future.
For sure. Yeah, I'd love to.
Be excellent to each other. And